this is really an opportunity for us to speak about the benefits of the Microsoft Surface and having a one-to-one device relationship in education. I think over the last couple of years, it's certainly something that we've seen been really important when we look across our children's and pupils' experience with home learning and then coming in and out of school with that agile learning necessitated by COVID, of course. It's clear that those that have access to one device seem to have had a one-to-one device ratio, seem to have had a better experience of that home learning, difficult as it has been. So so you can see some clear divides there depending on what's available to people. But so I think it's really, really important that we learn those lessons. I know here at ACS we've done a lot to try and help with that challenge over the period. We had our Tech Together campaign where we tried to make sure that we've got devices out into people's hands so that they were able to learn. It's important to us. I myself wasn't quite as useful. I just dressed up as Spider-Man and ran around my local area for the entertainment of of those stuck in. But without much more of ado, what I will say is if you have any questions, then please do put them in the chat and we'll endeavour to answer them as we go through. It is being recorded. And that recording will be sent to you at the end. So if you do need to dive off before we've finished, then that's fine. And everyone that attended is obviously going to be entered into a prize draw for a Surface device. So we will announce the results of that at the end by the end of this week. So once we've managed to tally up everybody who joined, put the names in a hat, draw it out, etc. But that's it. I'm going to hand over now to James. So over to you, James.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and a very warm good morning to all of you as well. Thank you for joining us this morning. So yes, my name is James Wilson. I look after L&D services at Readiness. We work with Microsoft, have done so for about 20 years now. Partners and customers all over the world, trying to help them to not only implement Microsoft solutions but get the best out of them as well. So education is very, very close to my heart. And has been an incredibly challenging topic over the past couple of years as well. So I've nothing but the greatest admiration for all of those who try and make that happen for the children in this part of the world. Now, the plan for today is to take you through certainly some information around devices and so forth. I also want to get people thinking about education generally and how that needs to maybe modernize a little more as we go forward as well. So there will be some little thought-provoking elements that I'm hoping will get you thinking. What I'm keen to say as well is this is a small enough group that if you've got questions, please put them in the chat or pop your hand up and I'll come and ask you. You can interact if you'd like to. You can save that for the end. I'm certainly going to be holding on at the end of the session as well to cover off questions. It's a recorded session, so I'd understand if people feel more comfortable holding back till the end. But you have got absolutely the opportunity to do that. So with no further ado from me, let's talk a bit about Surface Laptop SE, but let's talk about education generally and how these two fit together. I want to introduce this device and the operating system that is on it. I want to talk about how that fits in the current market, and I also want to talk about the products themselves. But I also, and most importantly, want to talk first of all about this principle that education has been impacted. And as we kind of pause for reflection on that statement and the move from the past and now this move towards an even more challenging future where we're going to try and combine what we did before with what we've done for the past couple of years. We keep hearing this term, the new normal, don't we? And for me, the real challenge has always been the same, which is how does teaching connect and engage students when you're in the classroom, but all the more so when you're not in the classroom, when you can't be together in the same physical location. It creates an extraordinary challenge for educators. So the solution, of course, for the past couple of years has been remote learning, and universities and schools and colleges everywhere have brought teaching online. And much as that's been incredible, it's also been a reactive emergency measure that was driven by a very urgent need to maintain continuity in children's education, rather than a long-term strategic move. Microsoft estimates that around 3 years worth of digital transformation and migration was conducted in the first 3 months of the pandemic. And that reaction has, of course, left us with some consequence and a lot of work and some cost and at times great frustration as well. But it's also altered the dynamic of how we provide education in the modern world, and that's created a whole new era of possibility. Education institutions can be incredibly proud of the work they've done during what has been a relentless series of unprecedented events without any real guidance of the right way to handle these challenges before. Learning kept going, and that's an incredible achievement. And today, students and educators are making their careful returns back to the classroom, back to the campuses worldwide. But like other aspects of life, there's been this change. So we'll talk as we go through about this concept. There really is nothing normal about the way education has been impacted over the past couple of years. It's just all new devices, new tools, new styles, new approaches, and new problems as well. It's been a challenging and painful learning curve for educators and sadly, in many cases, for students also, as they struggle to deliver. And an example, and I'll share a few examples of certainly my experiences over the past few years. I'd be fascinated to hear your viewpoints on this as well. For me, one of the things I've become much more aware of over the past couple of years is that I find it very easy to engage with students and people in my sessions, certainly, who are quite outgoing, who enjoy interacting with the tools in the same way that I do, who like to hit the hand button and do the thumbs up and drop their questions into chat and things like that. But that doesn't always allow for those members of a group who are more introverted, who don't want to use their camera or their microphone, who don't feel so confident to participate in those ways. And that's been a challenge for me to find new ways to help those people to engage, whether those be new games or new activities or new styles or models of interaction. The question still for me is, how do I make my content engaging for the people that are taking it in? And that's a part of the challenge of modern education, creating engaging lessons for students with a variety of different means to learn, to ensure that students achieve learning equity. Educational technology strategies are not only becoming more common, and that's very encouraging, but they're becoming bolder as well. And we've seen time and time again that crisis creates opportunity in terms of just giving you the freedom to pursue things that might have been too risky before or may have needed more thought before. It does create a certain degree of freedom to go and pursue things. The challenge is, to some extent, as the crisis abates, so then that freedom starts to feel as though we need to go back and we need to look at those things and make sure that we're okay and we've done everything diligently. And also there's a danger of fatigue when you are reacting to crisis after crisis in the way that we have done. The best part, though, about these changes in EdTech and the things that we have done is that they appear to be working. Countless educational institutions have been sharing their success stories from the past couple of years, and when for many this has been a disruptive and chaotic period, there are still those that are changing the way that we do things, still those that are innovating and adopting new technologies, and a big chunk of that is coming from education. That's tremendously heartwarming. But I think I want to just throw a question at you. You don't have to answer this out loud or anything like that. Just acknowledge the question in your head and see where your answer ends up. This is a maths question. It's a famous maths question. You might have heard it before. Question is, a bat and the ball are sold for £1.10. The bat is £1 more than the ball. How much is the ball? And this question, I'll give you a second to just maths your answers. The question is a trick question, and you'll have come across a number of these over the years, I'm sure. It's a attempt to bait you into thinking that the bat is £1. Of course, if a bat is £1 and it's £1 more than the ball, then we end up with the wrong number. The correct answer is it's £1. It's 5 cents, isn't it, for the ball, or £5. The point about this is that your brain feeds you information on a day-to-day basis, and assumptions are used to fill in the blanks. Assumptions are used to give quick answers when actually you need to go slower and you need to investigate more thoroughly. And there's books and articles about that I'm sure some of the people on this call have read. The challenge with this is there is a lot of assumption in the world of education, and it's difficult to break that down. This principle that we've had for years and years in education assumes that we're building a foundation of knowledge for students, and it assumes that you can layer a complete foundation of knowledge sort of row by row, much as if you're building a wall. And you can build that wall over the course of years to give students the education they need to go forward. The problem is, I know from being in that system, you know from being in that system and working with children who are in that system. So not everyone gets every brick in the time that they have. The system continues, and the system continues to create then gaps for those who are educated in this way. So assumptions can be quite harmful over the course of time, that people do understand or that people are taking in that knowledge. And then we kind of get to this idea that there are some preconceptions that help us to fill in these blocks and these gaps in the wall. And one of those I wanted to talk about today, just because it's particularly relevant, is this concept of VARK. As a educator, as a trainer and a coach, I've come across this numerous times, and I do believe in its value. And you'll see that education is broken down often into what is called visual, audio, reading and writing, and kinesthetic learning styles. And you will hear people talk that they are a visual learner or they're a kinesthetic learner. I'm hands-on, I'm a doer, things like that. There's definitely value in that, but the irony is, when you look at this from a scientific point of view, much as you will see that this is a very popular model, it's a very popular and well-adopted principle, there is no scientific evidence that suggests this offers any value to someone learning something. In fact, the evidence suggests it's more likely to cause harm than good. And the reality is that we're too quick sometimes to fill in the gaps. We're too quick to jump to the conclusion that actually, yes, this is a model and it works. The person who created this model has since suggested it needs to be used more broadly. And absolutely, you can see a good diagram and it can help you to understand something visually, and you can hear a good discussion that will help you to understand something from an audible perspective. But the reality is, people know in their hearts that if you want to teach geography, you use a map. If you want to teach music, that's far more audible. And there are strengths of different styles for different topics and for different aspects of education. So it's not the splitting of the children into their preferred learning style, it's the splitting of the content into the way that makes it most relatable. So these challenges go on, and it's still surprising. I look in on this from time to time. Still over 90% of educators think that children will learn best if they're educated in their correct style, and that's perhaps an assumption that we ought to challenge. This principle, this idea of challenging, is what brings me to this topic of one-to-one learning and providing a device for every student in our schools so that they have more control over how they consume information and how they interact with it, and more freedom to interact in ways that feel right and comfortable to those students as well. But the challenges don't stop with the students and the educators. They also continue with those who look after the IT departments in our educational organisations. And for those professionals, IT need to provision and deploy devices, sometimes remotely. They need to manage those devices and their updates throughout the course of a school year. And security is becoming more of a risk than ever before. Education is right up there in terms of who gets targeted the most. I think number one still is healthcare, and number two is education. So those who are responsible for protecting school assets will know as well as I do that that's a difficult job. And it's another of these relentlessly challenging scenarios that we have to try and tackle. So that requires more advanced responses, more response across devices and users and apps and data, and it's a big challenge. Give me 1 second. I want to play a short video for you that will introduce this new device. I just need to work some background magic and click some buttons, and away we go.
Bearded dragons are uniquely adapted to survive in arid forests and inland deserts.
So let's talk about this device then. This will change a few things, certainly. And schools are relying more on remote connections, and students do need devices now that help them stay engaged when they're in the classroom and when they're not in the classroom as well. And devices that can help to offer a learning experience that's tailored for the individual need as well, and perhaps for the different learning styles that want to be used to relay that topic. Now, IT has to provision those devices. They have to update them and protect them, and we talked about that. So Surface Laptop SE is certainly the biggest step forward as far as I'm concerned, and I've been working with the Surface team since its inception for over 12 years now. And this is the biggest step forward in the field of education, as so much as finding a device that is targeted at the need that that part of the market requires. On the one hand, these are slim and sleek classic laptop form factors. They stand out for their simplicity, but also the premium finish that's been put on them. That is something that Surface do, and Laptop SE has that highly regarded Surface design aesthetic, but it's approachable for any budget. And the other more practical elements, talking about battery life, security considerations, physical security as well as software security, those are built into these devices as well. What's interesting, though, about the design and the construction of these devices is that Microsoft have favored Intel Celeron processors. And although Celeron processors historically would have been felt to be on the more budget side, they are. That's the truth. Microsoft has counteracted that by constructing a new operating system for that processor, for this setup, for this device, to make sure that when you power on a Surface Laptop SE, applications will load quickly, they will run quickly, and they do that through a combination of eMMC storage and the processor and the customization of the OS. So there are some technical reasons behind that, but these devices work well. They have high resolution screens. They're 11.6-inch screens. In case you're wondering how big these devices are, they're about 12 inches. So they are in that sort of hyper portable area. And they have the front-facing 720p HD cameras, the stereo speakers, so these can participate on audio conversations very comfortably. They also have, and you can see these on the side here, a combination of USB-C and USB-A ports, which enable you to connect both modern and legacy items to this, as well as a 3.5mm jack, because that is still a thing, certainly that can be important. So let me give you an idea of how this might work for a student through the course of the day. Put together a student's day in the life. So if we look at Kayla, who is our student. So Kayla needs to check if play rehearsals are starting yet, so she can open her Surface Laptop SE. She signs in. This is a cloud profile, so Kayla's assets go with her wherever she signs in, whether that be on this device or another. She can have access to her resources. And she can have a look at the document she has on her device, but also she can open up the rehearsal schedule. She can do that by opening up Edge. She can see that she does here, box 2, and she looks at the school's play rehearsal schedule. She uses the Snap Assist feature, which is a part of Windows 11. I'm always amazed how many people haven't found that feature yet, this idea that you can push a screen all the way to the edge and it'll stick it on half the screen, allow you to put another on the other side. If you're curious about that, let me know, I'll show you. She has her class calendar saved to her desktop already, so she can access it even when she's on the bus and doesn't have an internet connection or something like that. So she can get access to where she needs to be. So Once she's at the school, Kayla can take then a maths quiz in this third section here. And her teachers created that class quiz in Microsoft Teams. And Teams automatically launches in full screen to help make focusing easier. At the end of class, Kayla uses the reflect feature. And that reflect feature works within Teams to allow Kayla to say how she's felt about that lesson, to offer some feedback to the teacher, to help the teacher to understand which bits worked and which bits were a struggle for some of the students. And she can get a sense of how the class is doing generally around that content. And I think this is something we've been scared of in the past, is allowing kids a mechanism to give feedback on teachers, but there are safe ways to do that without it becoming a problem. After lunch, Kayla attends study hall and uses her laptop to record a quick Flipgrid video. I'm a big fan of Flipgrid, and I know lots of students are really engaging with that. And that's in response to a prompt her history teacher has posted. So Kayla's able to do that. Then Kayla is picked up from school. She's picked up early and she joins class from home. And she can then participate and be seen and heard clearly using her device. After classes, Kayla opens up an assigned reading in her class notebook in OneNote. This uses the OneNote class notebook, so that's a specific thing you'll have come across perhaps. That notebook has automatically updated with her materials, and her teacher has posted those. So she's got the questions, she's got the assets, she's got the videos, and we can embed full videos into that. And Kayla can use it. She can use the immersive reader as well, which is a feature I'm a particular fan of, that will read out text out loud for students who maybe struggle to do that themselves, so they can follow it along. So that makes reading easier for students as well. And then finally, Kayla opens up Minecraft Education and completes a lesson that's been assigned to her in there. And Minecraft Education Edition allows us to create lessons that get kids solving puzzles and going through stories and understanding things, whether that be maths or programming, as you might expect, or whether it be things like emotional intelligence. We can build really quite fascinating content that helps kids to tackle those sorts of topics. So there's a broad way, or a broad range of ways that these devices can assist. And I believe that passes on to the IT professionals in a business or in a school or in an organization, a university, anywhere as well. So if we look at how an IT admin can manage Surface Laptop SE devices throughout a school year, well, that might look a bit like this. So we take our Mr. Turner here, and at the beginning of the year, Mr. Turner is using Windows Autopilot, which is one of my favorite features, to remotely configure Surface Laptop SE devices for a new 4th grade class. Now, many apps and policies come pre-installed and pre-configured. So things like Office 365 and Minecraft Education Edition, those are pre-installed and pre-configured, ready to go out of the box. And Mr. Turner is able to attach a student's cloud profile to a device so that he can install a handful of additional applications students might need when they first power on their devices. Windows 11 SE is already set up, it's got the correct apps, it's got the right policies, and that is the experience when a student first powers on that device. So they get straight to what they want to do, and they're able to do it straight away. Throughout that year, Mr. Turner can use Microsoft's Intune to push out additional updates as and when it is necessary to do so. And he can also have control over hardware elements. He can even disable hardware elements remotely should he wish to do so. Things like the camera or the Bluetooth or the USB sockets on an individual device. He can reset an individual device if a student is experiencing technical issues. With the holiday break approaching, a couple of students might end up damaging devices. These are schools we're talking about, so maybe a cracked screen or something like that. So Mr. Turner can deploy spare devices very quickly that he has on hand, transferring the students' cloud identities to the new devices when the students swap in the broken ones. And Mr. Turner can then send the broken devices away for repair. Alternatively, he can repair them on site as the opportunity to do that is improving. The teachers are requesting in this next block a new test proctoring app. So Mr. Turner can remotely install that app on all student devices using Intune. So he can push out the applications that are needed as and when they are required. So one week, a number of students might receive an email with a suspicious link to a website. So also we have tools like Smart Defender Smart Screen, rather Windows Defender Smart Screen, and that will check links and it will prevent children from clicking on links that are suspicious and help to keep them safe and their devices and data safe as well. And at the end of the school year, students would turn in these laptops and Mr. Turner can use Intune to reset the devices ready for the next 4th grade class that will be using those devices at the beginning of the next school year. So it's quite a lot to take in. I just want to stop on one of the points that I know will be raising some questions for people, which is tell me more about Windows 11 SE and what's built in and what's included. So Windows 11 SE is an education-specific operating system. It is exclusively available to students. It will not be exclusive to the Surface Laptop SE. That's just the first device that's running it. Of course, we expect other manufacturers to be able to use this operating system as well. It's simplified and secure, and it's optimized for online work. In every way it's been possible to do that. So it provides a very modern and streamlined performance. The experience is good for battery life. It's also good from a remote deployment and management perspective as well. So it optimizes and uses cloud-first applications and data, as well as cloud managed services as well. And that just means that schools have greater control and need less expensive infrastructure to manage the technology that they're putting into students' hands. So you'll get the best of Office 365. It includes Microsoft Office, it includes Teams, it includes Flipgrid and Minecraft Education Edition as well. And those are pinned to the start out of the box, enabling students to be instantly productive and have a consistent experience as well. For those working with Google Workspaces, the web apps in Chrome extensions, those run great in Microsoft Edge, which is also included. Applications like Zoom and Chrome work seamlessly. And the reason for that's really simple. Much as we want to create a consistent experience, we don't want to do that at the expense of what schools are already using and what students are already familiar with. So you have the choice to use what works best for you and for your students. But students can be safe knowing that their work will be synchronized when they get online. If they don't have reliable internet at home, they'll still be able to synchronize that information up. And I guess importantly, we are working with application developers, companies like Senso, NetSupport, Impero, to make sure that those applications are available. We know how important it is to have certain third-party applications. So whilst this is a device that you cannot just put any software on, we're working very closely with the key manufacturers to make sure all the most important elements are supported. But that's a point I want to dwell on for a second. You cannot just put any piece of software onto a Windows Surface Laptop SE. If you put Pro onto this, if you were to put Windows 11 Pro onto it, its performance would suffer because this operating system is optimized for it. So it's not like other devices where actually one of the first things you might do is put Windows 11 Pro on it so that you can add store support and other sorts of things. That won't work with a Windows 11 SE device in the same way. So it's important that we talk about those things and make sure that it's clear that this is about that out of the box experience and the additional support that's available through the store. But it's not just about Windows 11 SE for these devices. It's also about making sure that these devices are truly sustainable. So you'll be aware of Microsoft's commitment to minimizing its environmental impact, I'm sure. Surface devices are integral to achieving that. Microsoft's sustainability commitments include reducing carbon emissions and waste and making products and packaging designs carbon negative and achieving 100% recyclable devices and packaging by 2030. So some ambitious targets around the eco position on this and sustainability of that, but also Microsoft supports multiple reuse, refurbishment and recycling programs around the world, which cover not only the devices, but the batteries and the packaging as well. So you can fully recycle a Microsoft device. So from design to manufacturing to recovery, these devices have sustainability in mind, whether that be the fact that they are Energy Star certified, that they are increasingly repairable on site without the need for specialist tools. They're easy to update. They are multifunctional in terms of what you can do with them, and they can be recycled. So there is a real commitment to making sure that this is sustainable by school standard as well as by sort of wider standards around environment. And I'm well aware that schools don't always have the luxury to invest in devices that are sustainable. They're just thankful for the devices they can get many times. And that's why Microsoft is committed to ensuring that all of this is done at a price point that is affordable for schools. So Microsoft does believe that every device should be made with an emphasis on sustainability, and they do aim to continually improve not only the devices, but the accessories and everything around in the ecosystem that goes with it. The technology that powers the cloud is all driven by data centers that are carbon neutral and powered by mostly hydro. So that means that the whole process from the chips in the devices right through to the data centers that power the cloud is built with this in mind. And it doesn't stop there. Accessorizing isn't just about cases and keyboards and doing so in a sustainable fashion. It's about making devices that work for people as well. And it's become clear that more needed to be done from an accessibility point of view as well, particularly in education. So Microsoft is introducing the adaptive kit, which allows you to customize your device to make it work the way that you want it to work. And this, coupled alongside Microsoft's already industry leading accessibility solutions, such as the immersive reader, such as the settings that pervade pretty much every system that Microsoft puts into the market, they allow you to make a much more personalized experience that is designed to help everyone achieve more, which is Microsoft's goal. That doesn't mean you can't get a ruggedized case or a keyboard protector or a Kensington lock. These are schools, and there are some considerations that need to be taken to make sure devices can be protected from drops and falls and so on. And that becomes more important when you start to look at this one-to-one principle, this idea that now that blended and hybrid learning have become a much more lasting part of education, it's become more important for students to have an engaging and affordable device. So Surface Laptop SE is trying to deliver a secure and premium experience for students, but also something that's easy to deploy and manage for IT at an approachable cost. And what's more, Microsoft is working very closely with partners like ACS to develop those one-to-one initiatives to make sure it's as easy as possible for you to get the best chance of capitalizing on education despite the quite trying times that we face. And interestingly, only 1% of primary schools and 2% of secondary school pupils do have access to devices in the UK. So this is very much something that is a growth area, something that needs to improve, in my opinion. When you cross the water and you look at the American scenarios, they're closer to 85% in terms of one-to-one usage in schools. And this equates to about 4 million pupils in the UK that don't have access to a device that we believe is fit for purpose. So there is an enormous opportunity to improve what I think is this one-to-one adoption in the UK. Now, the real questions that start to surface when you think about this tend to be around cost first. So I don't want to waste too much time before we get into that. Our research has found that the most common challenge is cost. So we'd like to discuss how institutions are overcoming this. And there are three ways, typically, that institutions are overcoming this. The first is capital expenditure. There are organizations out there who do have the money and invest the money. And that's great. And sometimes that justification for making a capital expense is offset by other savings, and I'll get into that in a second. The other models are leasing and parental contribution, which are more common, and I'll talk about those in just a second as well. So for many, capital expenditure might seem like a barrier that can't be overcome, as the initial investment may seem to be too much for a typical school's IT budget. However, it's now been proven by many institutions that when taking total cost of ownership and the savings that can be brought by fully utilizing digital experiences for students, you can make significant savings elsewhere. So as an example of that, this is Wellington College, who saved 3.8 million sheets of paper every year, and that provides a discount for them of £120 per device on average. I did a bit of extra maths on this. You could compare that pile of paper with the Shard in London, and it comes up about there. It's about 250 meters worth of paper if you were to pile it up like that. It's a fairly significant capital expense. And if we're talking about sustainability again, it's an area of extreme concern from an environmental perspective as well. So there are some opportunities to make these big savings. Now, in addition to that, other institutions where capital expenditure is not an option start to consider things like leasing and parental contribution, and those are tried and tested routes to procurement. So Ribblesdale are a high school. They're a 1,200 pupil school in Clitheroe in Lancashire, and they have an EdTech strategy. They're an EdTech demonstrator school, so they're a Microsoft Showcase school, to be transparent, and they've deployed a parental contribution model. And I understand some might react by thinking, okay, well, if they've partnered with Microsoft essentially, so surely they're getting freebies and discounts and so forth. And whilst there may have been some truth to that early on, this is a model that Ribblesdale have been using for over 5 years now. And that parental contribution ensures that every student in years 7 right the way through to 11 now have access to a personal device. And it's an option that requires careful consideration, but it's a proven way to do that. The thing I've always found quite interesting is when we work with parents and we work with schools who are creating these opportunities for their students and seeking help from the parents. If you put 3 devices, a good, better, or best option in front of a parent, they pick the best option time and time again, more often than not. And we've seen that with Surface, that people do tend to promote Surface as the choice they want for their kids, and they're recognizing that for a variety of reasons. And speaking to parents about this, some just want their child to have the best device, the best opportunity, and they're looking at the cost and just going for the most expensive because they want what is best for their child. Others, though, are looking at it more pragmatically and looking at the support for handwriting and looking at the support for the typing experience and so forth, and recognizing that actually it's a better device to meet the needs of the student. But it's interesting to me, and you can please do share your own feedback on this. When parents get involved and start selecting devices, they tend to favor more premium devices, more powerful, more capable devices for the students. And I guess it wouldn't be fair to have this session today and not talk about Google as well, because Google do a lot of things incredibly well. And one of the things they've done well over the past decade or so is introduced extremely affordable devices into education in the form of Chromebooks. I want to specifically address some of the questions that I know you will have in comparison to Google around these Surface Laptop SE devices. The first might be, I'm anticipating around the whole, does it really work offline in the way it's supposed to? And that's a question that I've had a lot, and we talk about offline access. Google Docs provides offline access, so the difference should be explained. And many students don't have broadband connectivity at home, and mobile data connections don't necessarily help because you're reliant then on a plan that would support their data needs. And even when a school provides something like a data connection, an LTE connection, we've heard from customers that not all students have reliable signals to be able to take advantage of those mobile data connections. So as an offline example of how a Surface Laptop SE would work, an educator can distribute homework using OneNote class notebook, and that will include all of the material embedded into that notebook. The videos would be embedded into that notebook, so students can read and watch videos offline and type up their responses in OneNote or in PowerPoint or in Word, all of which are included. And then once they reconnect at the school, those assignments will automatically sync up with the network and they will be turned in. Another obvious area of interest is going to be price, and we're asked, will Windows 11 SE be more expensive than Google's solution? No, the cost for any Windows 11 SE device is not going to be higher as a result of Windows 11 SE. There's no charge or premium for this operating system. It's been tailored for these devices, so that doesn't add any premium. And that doesn't elevate the cost, despite the fact that there are numerous fairly key pieces of software that are included. So when you consider other benefits like management, productivity with Office 365, the accessibility features and so forth, Windows 11 SE becomes an incredibly competitive and affordable example. So there are going to be other questions. Perhaps the most important would be that Google has become something of a de facto standard. Why would we switch? And we've heard from schools who talk about that. And we've also heard some of the challenges and disappointments those schools have faced with the choices they've made so far as well around the Google ecosystem. But specifically, these devices need to meet this ambition of one-to-one, and they need to be able to help educators to deliver in a broader sense, and they help to drive learning of all variations. So we believe there's a significant gap in terms of what is on offer across the ecosystem here. But coming on to perhaps the biggest areas that I've seen sort of talked about, the first is cost. So let's get to that. Surface Laptop SE devices will start at £229, and the RRP for the quad core is £299. And for years, I've debated how Surface devices add value that isn't obvious, how they can help to save on total cost of ownership when making investments into technology, and how we've argued that students, staff get better results when there is investment into them in the form of technology. And we've seen countless times the parents weighing in on that and voting with their wallets, as I mentioned. So when Surface is offered, it makes a difference. We've spoken about all of that before, and we should absolutely continue to talk about that with you. But Surface Laptop SE delivers the most aggressive pricing point as well to date in this field from Microsoft, and allows schools to start building more complete solutions that take advantage of the best Microsoft technology at an affordable price. So in short, other devices have fought this battle on price, and they've done well for long enough, and Microsoft is helping to make a more complete solution, a more complete offering easier to swallow, to help to continue that battle in terms of value as well. So it's not a more expensive solution, and offers, we believe, far more value as well. And some may ask questions around what is Flipgrid and what is Minecraft. Am I paying for that? These are technologies that allow teachers to facilitate video discussions for students to build excellent presentations that they can deliver back. They can work in groups to create them, and when they are given access to a discussion topic, they can work on it. So if you've not experimented with Flipgrid, it's a great one to take a look at. Similarly, Minecraft Education requires a bit of time and energy to start creating classes that talk about story-driven experiences. But there are partners that work with us who do the specialist bits, and I would encourage you to speak to ACS to learn more about those elements as well. In terms of repairability, it's always been a challenging area for Surface because they were committed to making these densely packed devices that didn't have any air inside them, that were more durable in the first instance. So Surface devices are designed to take a knock. That's the first thing. However, they can you can now replace screens and batteries and keyboards on a Surface Laptop SE on site without the need for any specialist tools. And this is a part of Microsoft's commitment to making these things more recyclable and reusable, so that they can be maintained more effectively on premise, but also for actual recycling purposes as well. There are going to be some scenarios though where Surface Laptop SE is not the right device for your student's requirement or for your staff's requirement. And Surface does have a broad family now of devices that fit multiple scenarios and can help. And we've seen that educators do like certain devices for their style. And we know that artistic students like Studio, and we know that educators like laptops, and they like Pro because of the ability to use pen and the ability to draw. And we've seen a very sort of diverse set of feedback talking about those devices and how they work. Equally though, that experience I talked about earlier about how we deploy these devices and how we image these devices out of the box, regardless of what you end up with, you will find it is an easy experience to move someone's stuff from one to another. It is an easy experience to set up a new device. With regards to Windows 11 SE, it's an easy experience to get started and to get going in the morning as well. And I can't stress enough how transformational it's been, certainly from back when I was doing things, to look at how you would set up groups of devices, 20, 30 devices at a time. That used to be an awful burden to get those devices unboxed, set up with Windows on, Office on, additional software on, updated, protected, user accounts applied, configurations applied, policies applied. tested and then distributed, that was a lot of work, and that's not the case anymore. So Intune and Autopilot make that a lot easier. And there's some comments here about physical security as well, whether it be disabling cameras or actually locking the device down physically using Kensington Nano security slots. They are devices that are built with schools in mind from beginning to end. There's an awful lot of progress that's been made there. And I think from my perspective, the key thing is that we are finding devices that enable us to do things in new ways, because we need to do things slightly differently to take the best of what we've learned the hard way and what we had before, and when we want to combine that together. Okay, so I'm slightly conscious of time, and thank you all so much for giving up so much of your time today. We've talked about a few key areas. I'm very keen to take questions from you as well, but I also want to make sure you know that there is additional support for you should you wish to speak to us after today, if you need to go away and have a think. So we'll make a video recording of this session available. I think the next steps from here are just to let us know your questions, and certainly come and have a chat with us, talk to your account manager, talk to ACS about what you think potentially your plans are going forward, and how we might be able to support you with that. So that's about it from me. I am going to hover on the call and answer questions in just a moment, so anyone who does want to hang back can do so. But in terms of wrapping up, I just want to hand over now to Stephen for a few closing thoughts.
I think it's been an excellent session there, James. So I think it really does show the value that the Surface Laptop SE can deliver. But I'm not sure I can add much more to it, if I'm honest. I think it was pretty comprehensive. I did think when we were looking at the other devices in the range, particularly the Surface Laptop Go at the moment, we're seeing is a very popular device for those that do need that more power. I say more power, but they need the full-fledged operating system for the more corporate end user or the more business focused users, and that hits a really nice price point. It's a really good quality device. I'm a big fan of it. So that's definitely one to have a look. I don't think it sits between the laptop and the Go between there on that particular slide. I think that slide might predate it slightly, but it's a great device anyway.
Yes,
But thank you very much. If anyone does have any questions, then please let us know. Happy to answer them at the end. And if you'd like to explore the Surface Laptop SE and what that could do for your institution, then please do get in touch with your account manager at ACS. If you're not sure who that is, then please do just give us a call, 01604 704 000, and we'll be able to put you in the right direction. Thank you all. Do we have any calls and questions even? Not so far. Okay.
Oh, there is a question.
Just at that moment. Just about it. So, Addy, you've got a question. Do you want to unmute yourself and just and ask away?
Yeah. How you doing, Stephen? You okay?
Yeah, not bad. Yourself.
Just a question about we obviously trying to go for a one-to-one device strategy in our prep schools. I work in the independent sector.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be very much, James, I don't know if you have we might have a contact at Wellington College, but I'll be very much interested in knowing and speaking to them about their journey, because we're kind of starting on that journey. So any contacts will be useful.
Okay.
The other question for me, for both of you, is really understanding. We saw the SE. I was back 2 days ago, and we looked at SE, and SE was, as a device, though very useful, but I have alarms in my head of, if you remember RT, I still have a pile of those lying somewhere which are good for garbage and e-collection, and they didn't last very long at all. And I know that was an ARM chip. This is Celeron, so things have moved on and things are very different. But I do worry about the restrictions on that operating system, and especially when we're looking at buying devices where parents can pay over a 3-year period and then own the device at the end of it. I am not sure if SE is going to last 3 years, or if students are then going to be able to install stuff on it and find it useful. So do you think in that scenario, Go or a Pro is a better choice? And we also need inking, which is interesting.
I've got my view on that. I don't know if you want to weigh in on it first.
Yeah, I think, I mean, my gut, I'm attracted to the full power of the fully fledged Windows operating system. If you're talking 3 years and beyond, then potentially that. If you want to go to that route, then if you need inking, then the Laptop Go probably isn't quite the right device for you, because although it's a touch screen, it's a laptop. There is the Surface Go, which would fulfil that requirement and keep the price at a lower point, and also then the Surface Book Pro you identified as well is a good one. I know that having the inking capability in the independent sector is particularly something that comes up quite regularly. James, what's the roadmap say for Windows Surface SE?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think it's fair to say when you're looking at these devices, you are probably looking at earlier age groups. For these, there is an undeniable primary vibe when you start to look at these that doesn't perhaps go past K-12 so much. However, there is opportunity in the future, and I can't say an awful lot more at this stage, so I don't have the detail, but you may be aware of the work that we're doing with virtual desktops and Azure Virtual Desktop and so forth. And that creates an opportunity. The testing looks good for being able to run advanced applications, being able to run really quite powerful and demanding applications, even on these devices who don't then need to do the hard work themselves. So I'm on the fence a little bit. You might be able to tell. I do share Stephen's opinion that some places will just know that they need more. And if you are on that sort of side of the fence, then Surface Laptop SE is maybe not the starting point for you, and I would consider looking at Surface Pro potentially, or Laptop Go, or Go, or any variant of those three words.
You've got some good choices there to make.
You have got some good choices, and one of the most defining points for me is the need for touch. If you want to promote that handwriting and handwritten element as well, I know that can be incredibly important to schools. That would be a factor that would help me to decide it, certainly. But in terms of the power, I think that's less of an issue going forward, because other solutions will necessitate that we do things in a smarter way. We just can't get the chips. At the rate we're going, we're not going to be able to have the technology consumption that we have today, so we need new plans.
Thank you so much, James. Just a question on 360s. Is Microsoft laptops, are they going to go to a 360 model at all, or kind of that's becoming more of, because I know HP is doing it. We were looking at HP's Elite books, which are pretty interesting, and they have a full 360 and inking capability, but they're a little thick when you're writing on the table with them. So, and I know Pro and Go works really well in that matter, especially the new Pro, which has got a more 4:3 aspect ratio compared to the older ones. So are we going to see something a bit more stable, like sturdy laptops, more of 360 from Microsoft?
Yeah, so it's not something I can give you any clarity on today, as you might expect. I think you've probably seen the sneak previews that you were going to see at BET, if you were at BET. However, my personal opinion on this has always been the same, which is Microsoft is absolutely committed to choice, and therefore I think it's only a matter of time before you start seeing more choice, especially in response to the feedback that we're hearing from customers. That's a very political answer, but
Thank
I
you
can
so
do for it. Sorry, I'm being recorded. I can't. Yeah.
It's and that device form factor is an interesting question, because if you sit there and you think about Surface Pro, Surface Book Pro, which is what device that I use and have there, the keyboard being detachable, does that really work as well as a Surface Pro rather than the Surface Book? Does that work as well? There is that question. If people want that more robust keyboard, then the Book was always a very good fit for that, and now the Surface X. But obviously, it pushes the price up a little bit.
Just sorry, chipping in, guys. From a Microsoft perspective, and that was interesting feedback from a deal around the SE. I guess look, up until 2 or 3 months ago, if we wanted to really walk the talk of one-to-one device into education, whether that be state or private schools, we really had a very, I guess, top loaded range from a price perspective. And if we really wanted to drive this initiative that everybody has a device, and certainly, as James quite rightly alluded to, more kind of primary end, cost would just be, it's public money, right? Isn't it? It would just be so prohibitive. But what I'm kind of seeing now is we have, I think we're really servicing, or we've got a good proposition for education customers at every price point, and also kind of not just specification, but at every accessibility point as well. And like you kind of quite rightly say, Stephen, is if you want power, we've got power.
Yeah.
If you need an entry point device, do you know what, we've got that now as well, which is brilliant. And then, overlay that with Windows 11 SE, and again, James, to your point around that from an SE perspective with Windows 11 SE as well, and maybe some perceived limitations to it, we do have that fantastic kind of Azure Virtual Desktop and all of the future stuff there. But I love it. I love that, I love that schools love our products because they are pretty phenomenal. And I know I've got rose tinted glasses there, but yeah, and at ACS you do kind of a great job in making sure the fit of device is right as well. So yeah, great session, James. Brilliant session.
Thank you very much.
I think you spot on, Jenny. There's some really good devices that in the Microsoft range at the moment, and really having a device that's able to take and give an option to that kind of Chromebook world, and then being able to break that out into Windows 365 Azure, a virtual desktop, that capability in the longer term, that's really powerful, particularly when you're talking public money, particularly when you're in that tight price point per device. It's certainly there. And then, as I say, the range is really good. I mean, I've seen HP 360s in independent sector, and I'll be honest, I'm not impressed. It's not a device that I personally think stands up, when you start comparing it against the Surface range. But some of that will be personal preference, some of that will be be the reality of what's available. But no, I think it's I think you'd be wrong not to give serious consideration to the Microsoft range in any kind of large deployment at the moment. And as I say, that laptop Go, even in the corporate world, when we take it out of education, we're seeing that being incredibly popular. I hope everybody enjoyed the session, and we'll all speak soon. Take care.
Brilliant.
Thank you all. Bye
Thank
for now.
you. Bye-bye.